So here we have this header element containing a navigation where its links are grouped together in an unordered list. As we can see here, the unordered list has a class of main nav and contained within this main header element. So let's add a drop-down menu to one of our links. So let's, for example, make it so that when we hover over work, we see a list of menu items. So we'll see design work, development work, photography, writing, and so forth. So let's go back to our markup and we'll find the work menu item and we'll open up the list item that contains it. And let's give the parent list item the class Dropdown. So later we'll use this class to indicate that there's a drop-down menu there. And beneath our work link, let's create an unordered list and let's give it the class DropNav. So inside of our DropNav UL, I'll quickly add some list items containing our drop-down link. So there's one for design, development, writing, and photography. So let's see what it's looking like so far. I'll save this and refresh, and there we see our new list of drop-down links right below work. So we'll need to do a little more work with CSS. So the first thing we'll want to do, so far we just have some basic styles just to get our page started. So this is the font face rule for the logo, some body styles, main header styles, just a little CSS housekeeping to get us started. So right down here, let's start by targeting that drop-down class we just created, and we want to position it relative. So anything that's absolutely positioned inside of it will be relative to that drop-down. So right below that, let's target the DropNav UL. So this is our nested drop-down menu, and we'll want to position this absolute. So it'll be positioned absolute, and it'll be relative to drop-down. And we want to initially hide it, so let's give it a display none, which, as we can see, made it go away. So next, we'll need to create a hover style that reveals the drop-down menu when we hover over work. But before that, let's select DropNav and the list items inside of it. And let's add some nice border styles so that it creates some kind of separation between the links. So we'll say border bottom, 1 pixel solid, and let's use an RGBA of white. So we'll say 255, 255, and 255. And let's make it really light. So we'll give it an alpha of 0.2. So right below that, we'll reveal our drop-down menu with a hover pseudo class. So we'll say drop down hover, and then we'll use a child selector to target that drop down nav class on hover. And when it does that, it displays it block. So now when we take a look at it again and hover over work, there we see our drop down nav. And once we hover away from it, it goes away. So what we'll want to do next is add an arrow icon right next to this work text to indicate that there's a drop-down menu there. So back in our style sheet, let's say right below this drop-down class, we'll do drop-down followed by the after pseudo element, and this is what we'll use to generate that icon. So first, let's say content, and we'll want to display a Unicode character that renders that downward pointing icon. So we'll say /25BC, and let's adjust the font size. So let's make the font size for that 0.5 and we'll also want to display it block so that we're able to see it. And let's also position this absolutely. And now because it's relative to that drop-down element, we can offset it with some top and right offset. So for top, we'll say 38%, and let's say right 12%. Some nice magic numbers there. All right, so let's take a look at it in the preview. When we refresh that, there we see the down pointing arrow right next to the work text. So what if we need to add another level of navigation to our dropdown? So for example, when we hover over photography here, we want to see a list of the types of photography. So we'll probably want a flyout menu that's displayed to the right of our menu. So let's go ahead and build one. So in our HTML, we'll find our drop-down nav and the photography link. So let's open up this list item, and inside of this, we'll create our flyout navigation. So right below photography, we'll create a new unordered list. But first, we'll want to give its parent element a class. And let's give it the class flyout. And now we'll give our unordered list a class. And this time, the class will be flyout nav. And I'll just go ahead and nest some links in there. So for example, we'll have nature photography, people photography, and pets photography. Nice. So now anytime we want to include a flyout menu in our dropdown, we can simply use this flyout component. So it's pretty modular. So let's save this and go back to our CSS and create a few styles for our flyout navigation. So first, we'll also want that flyout list item to be positioned relative. So we'll group the flyout class with the drop-down class, and we want our flyout menu to be hidden initially and also positioned absolute. So we'll group the flyout nav class with our drop nav class. So next, we'll need a way to reveal the flyout nav on hover. So once again, let's just group this new selector with the ones we created for our drop-down nav. So we'll target flyout on hover, followed by a child element with the class flyout nav. So now when we save our HTML file and take a look at it in the browser, we see the initial drop-down menu, and once we hover over photography, we see the new list of links. So let's make it so that it's positioned to the right side of our drop-down nav. And we'll do that with some left and top offset. So right below the hover rule, we'll again target flyout nav, and let's offset it to the left by 100%. And let's set its top position to 0. And when we looked at our flyout menu, we see that it doesn't have a background color just yet, so we can't really see it. So what we're going to do is give it a background color that's a little lighter than this blue to kind of set it apart from the drop-down nav. So let's do that. Right below the flyout nav selector, let's create a new rule by targeting the anchor elements inside this flyout class on hover. And let's also give the entire flyout nav a background color as well. So for that, we'll just say flyout nav. Now we'll need to define the background color. So let's give the background a hex value of 395066. All right, so I think we're all set here. Let's save our style sheet, go back to the preview, and let's refresh the page. And when we hover over work, we see the drop-down navigation. And once we hover over photography, there we see our flyout nav. So in an upcoming tip, we'll probably get into how to make this responsive by building it with a mobile-first approach.